All right, hi everyone, and thank you for joining the Kuali Research December Hot Topics webinar. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Andrea Martin, and I am a trainer and client support analyst here at UCSD in the Office of Contracts and Grants. If this is your first time attending one of our monthly Hot Topic webinars, we try to keep them under 30 minutes, and our goal with this webinar series is to go over some of the common questions that we are receiving from UCSD's Kuali Research Help Desk, so we can show you all some of the best practices and how to perform those tasks. If you have any questions as I'm going through the topics, please feel free to type your question into the chat. Pam Talarita, who is also on the training and client support team, will answer them and chime in as well. And we will also have time for questions at the end. Perfect, so let's get into the agenda. Today we will be covering how to update the Requisitioner on a subaward and update the Supplier site ID on a subaward. Yeah, just making a couple modifications. So let's get into Kuali. And first, I'm going to get into Kuali Research by selecting that Research Home tile. And I'm going to search for my subaward. So to do that, I'm going to go and I'll expand that left-hand menu. And I'm going to go into our Common Task page. I'll go ahead and collapse that menu. Perfect, and then from here, I just want to find this subaward card, and I'm going to click on the Search Subawards. Okay, and from here we have lots of different search criteria fields that can be used to search for my subaward. Since I have the ID, I'm just going to use this subaward ID field and then search for that. And I'll go ahead and click on search. And then I'll scroll to the bottom so I can see my results. And to get into the subaward, I'm going to click on open. Perfect, so we are in the subaward and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. And since we're making some updates, I'm going to click on edit. Perfect, so now we are in edit mode. And in here, like I said, we're going to be updating the Requisitioner and the Supplier site ID. Those are both very important fields, and you want to make sure that this information is always kept up to date if any changes are made. So first, before we update the actual fields, since we're making a modification, it's important that we update the description field. So when these modifications are submitted for approval, the subaward team knows exactly what they're reviewing for approval. So in this description field, I'm going to delete that last description. And I'm just going to enter something like Requisitioner and SSID update. And in the explanation field, you can provide more details if you'd like. I'll just say something like current Requisitioner will be on vacation and current SSID is affiliated with incorrect address. Perfect. So again, whether you're making a modification that is financial or a requisitioner update, unless you note the update in that description, the subaward team is not going to know what modification you're submitting to them, and you need to tell them what you're doing in those fields. Perfect, so now that we've noted our updates, I'm going to navigate down over here into this requisitioner field. And as a reminder, the requisitioner is the person approving invoices on the subaward. So this could be you or a supervisor or a designated person in your department that approves invoices. Whoever will be approving invoices for the subaward, make sure they are listed here. It's also important that this field is updated if that person no longer works in your department or is on leave or maybe even just taking some time off when you know invoices will need to be approved while they're gone. So in this example, Pam is currently listed as the requisitioner because she approves all the invoices for the subaward. But if she's taking some time off for a few weeks, let's say, and I know an invoice will need to be approved while she's away, I'm going to make sure that whoever is covering for her while she's gone is listed here. So in this example, let's say I'm covering for her. So I'm going to update this field and list myself as the requisitioner. Perfect. So to do that, first I'll click on the magnifying glass to the right of the field. You do not want to type your name directly into that field or whoever the new requisitioner will be. And we have a few different search criteria fields available to use. So I'm just going to use the first name and last name fields. I'll put in myself and click on search. Perfect. And then to select myself, I'm just going to go to that left-hand column and click on that return value. Perfect. And then I'll scroll down and I can see my results. And then to the right, you'll also see the requisitioner unit field. This will also be updated with the requisitioner's unit. But some users are affiliated with more than one unit. So you want to make sure that the unit listed here is affiliated with the UCSD PI's unit for this subaward. So if you need to update it, pretty similar to what we just did, you just click on that magnifying glass and search for the correct unit if that needed to be updated. I also want to point out, if you update the requisitioner and don't wait until the subaward team approves that update before submitting an invoice on the subaward, the invoice approval will still go to the last approved requisitioner. So that is important to keep in mind that you need to wait for that requisitioner update approval before submitting invoices. We see a lot of help desk tickets where invoices being approved are delayed because the requisitioner wasn't updated with someone who can approve invoices because they're either on leave or just no longer work at UCSD. Perfect. So now that that's been updated, I'm going to keep scrolling down. And now let's update this supplier site ID field. As a reminder, the supplier site ID is very important because this controls the address that the invoice check will be sent to. This is another frequent help desk ticket that we receive. We also have outside universities and organizations contacting us because they receive checks that were meant for different departments. So you really just want to double check that this field is correct before submitting an invoice so the check ends up at the correct address. There are a few steps involved with this process, but it is pretty simple, and I do have a step-by-step knowledge base article with these steps that I'm about to do, along with an article for the steps for updating the requisitioner that I'll send all of you. And I'll also send a recording of this webinar so you can look back at this later. So step one is getting the vendor code of the subrecipient. So to do this, you will need to go to this subrecipient field and click on the small book icon to the right of the field. And then a window will pop up, and we're going to scroll down and find the vendor code here. So I'll go ahead and just copy that code. Perfect. I'll go ahead and exit out of that. And now step number 2 is we need to download the OFC suppliers report from Oracle. So we've tried to make it easy. There's a couple different ways you can get to that report. If you have WalkMe installed, you'll have these smart tips available to you along with this WalkMe button. I'll also send an article to you on making sure that you have WalkMe downloaded, so these options are available to you. But the first option to get to that report, so in the smart tip, we do have the breadcrumbs of where in Oracle you can locate this report. We also, to the left of that, have the supplier site ID button. And when you click on that button, it will automatically take you to that page in Oracle. But it can be a little slow. You do just have to be a little bit patient because it's not going to take you directly to that page at first. It's just going to basically just kind of click through, and it might take like 30 seconds or so for you to actually get to that report. So I can actually walk you through those breadcrumbs right now. Let me get into Oracle. And first, I'm going to click on this Reports and Analytics button. Next, I'll click on those arrows up here at the top next to the All folders. And then I'll click on Shared Folders. Next, I'll click on the Custom folder. And now I'm going to click on the Procurement folder. Next, I'll click on Central Office. And then the non-PO supplier list folder. Perfect. And then here is the report. I'll go ahead and click on that. Just thinking for a second. Perfect. So here's the report. So I think it's really helpful to download this as an Excel file, which you can do by clicking on the export button here at the bottom and clicking on Excel. That way, if you need to reference the report throughout the week, you can save this file and refer back to it. And it's probably good though to make sure that you re-download a new report every 1 to 2 weeks because new addresses could be added and the report can be updated. And I actually have a report right now. Let me go ahead and clear this filter. Okay, perfect. So this is what the report will look like if you download it into Excel. And so with that vendor code that I just copied, I'm going to search for it in this report. So I'm going to, in the supplier number column, I'll click on that filter. I'll go to text filters. And I'm going to enter in that vendor code and click OK. Perfect. And now we see all of the Brown University addresses that are affiliated with the vendor code. So now what you want to do is you want to look in the address column and find the mailing address that is listed on the invoice that you receive. Sometimes there's just one address affiliated with the vendor code in this report. And sometimes there are multiple addresses like in this example. So I'm going to say that I want the invoice check mailed to this first address that's listed in here. So next, what I'm going to do is take the supplier site ID that's affiliated with that address. I'll just go ahead and copy that right from the report. And I'll go ahead and minimize that. I'm going to go back into Kuali. And I'm going to delete that outdated supplier site ID and just paste in that new one.
Andrea, can you click back over to Oracle real quick so I can show them what I'm trying to tell them in the chat? Okay, yeah. See on the very top, everybody, you see the house and then you see the star key next to it. That, I believe, is the favorites. And so if you save the report to your favorites, then when you log into Oracle and you click on favorites, then the report will not show exactly like it is right now, but it will take you to the report, and you can just click on the report to open it.
Oh, perfect. That's a great tip. I definitely recommend that you all do that. Thanks, Pam.
No problem.
Perfect. So I'm going to jump back into Kuali. And then so when an invoice is submitted on the subboard and it's approved by the requisitioner, the invoice will go into Oracle and be affiliated with this supplier site ID and mailed to the correct address. I'll also just point out too, if this is for a multi-campus award, you will always just enter campus as the supplier site ID. And we have that noted in the smart tip for you to reference. Perfect. So now that those fields have been updated, we can go scroll to the bottom of the screen, and I'll go ahead and click on Save. Perfect. And to submit these modifications, we need to submit them. So I'm going to go into the Subboard Actions tab, the second to last tab. And then to complete submitting this, you'll just go to the bottom of the screen and click on Submit. Sometimes submitting is a step that people forget, but after you save any modifications, in order for the subboard team to approve them, the modifications must be submitted to them. Perfect. Pam, are there any questions or do you want to add anything?
Actually, can you, a couple people have asked how to, actually I'm trying to understand what she's saying. I need to update the address. Okay, all right. So the question was, how do you update the supplier address if it is different than what is on the list? So if the address that you're looking for, the remittance address from the invoice, is not on the list for supplier site IDs for that requisite or for that subaward subrecipient, then what you need to do is you need to log into Payment Compass, and you need to send a request to the subrecipient asking them to register their new address. They are responsible for doing that. We can't do that that I'm aware of. They need to log into Payment Compass with the link that you send them and upload their new address. And then another, like, you know, if they have like 3 addresses already and they're like payment check 1, 2, and 3, then this one will probably be payment check 4. And it can take some time, you know, up to a couple weeks, I'm finding, depending on the backlog. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Perfect. And if you do have any questions regarding this process, please feel free to reach out to our help desk. It is very important that these fields are correct. So please don't hesitate if you do have any questions about the steps that I just did. And actually, if you go into, let me go into Blink, and if you type in Kuali Research and search, and click on the first page that comes up, our Kuali Research page. The bottom right-hand side of the screen, we have all of our help desk information, so you can reach out to us via email or through our UCSD Support and Services portal. If you have any questions regarding your outgoing subawards that are not system related, more just business process, you can reach out to the subaward team at subawards@ucsd.edu. And then going back to our Blink page, we do have resources for you. So on the left-hand side, the last link under our resources section, we have a link to our knowledge base articles. And in here, we just have lots of guidance for you regarding Kuali research specifically. along with just general research administration articles too. And this page is also where you can find the articles that I mentioned to you earlier with all of the steps. So for this one. So I'll make sure that I send this to all of you along with a recording. But also please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about updating the supplier site ID or requisitioner fields.